lights off. All right, webinar is now streaming. These can always be found on YouTube afterwards. So if you want to share it with someone, or you were on and your spouse wasn't, and I answer something that you had a question on, feel free to share it with them. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Chris Berry, financial planner, certified elder law attorney with Castle Wealth Group. We do legal, financial, and tax planning. We help good families plan, protect, and preserve what's important to them. And I always like to start with a positive focus, something positive that happened over the last week or so. And had Thanksgiving. So it was great to spend time with family, spend time with my family, spend time with my wife's family. It was just a good time. Lions did what they usually do, but U of M got a big win over Ohio State. And whether you're a U of M fan or MSU, or you don't really care, we can all agree that beating Ohio State's kind of cool. So that's a nice way to end the year, go into the end of the year. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So give me just a second as I hit a couple buttons to get that going. And I hit this button. I hit this button. All right. Now, anything new that might affect Roth conversion? All right. Yep. Another question came in, so I'll get to those, but I'll go in the order they came in. So I had some submitted ahead of time, so I want to take care of those first. So let me share my screen. And Zoom makes me download another application, which is always fun. And boom, there we go. All right, should be in business. Yes. All right. This is always general information. If you have a specific question, just reply back to the email with the invitation, and we can go ahead and get that answered. So first question. We both contributed $7,000 each to our Roth IRA accounts for 2021. So an important thing here is a contribution. Now we'd like to max out the 22 or 24%. So what they're talking about here, what they're talking about here is a conversion. So these are two very different concepts. Again, we talk about a lot of times these different tax buckets that we deal with. So we have non-qualified, we have tax deferred or pre-tax, and then we have tax-free. So, and inside the tax-free, we have things like Roth, cash value life insurance, 529s, health savings accounts. And most people think taxes are going up in the future. So the idea of trying to get money into, more specifically, these Roths, as well as cash value life insurance, that really appeals to a lot of people these days. So there's two ways to get money into a Roth. So if you want to get money into a Roth, how do you do that? One is a contribution. So you need to be working, so you need to have income, and you can contribute that earned income to a Roth depending on your income levels. Looking for move things around on me. People came in and cleaned things on me. And it's the amount you can contribute is typically $6,000 or $7,000 depending on your age, but there is an income limit. And the income limit last year for a married couple, it's going to be phased out starting at $198,000. So if you're a married couple with more than $198,000 worth of income, and it actually ends at 2008, then you cannot do a Roth conversion. So that was one of the limits that have been set up on Roth. Sorry, not a Roth conversion. You cannot do a Roth contribution. So that's one of the limits that are set up on Roth contributions, is that if you're a high income earner while you're working, they didn't want to allow you to do a Roth contribution. Now there's ways around it. There's things like backdoor Roths or what's called rich man Roths, which is not a Roth, but cash value life insurance. But it's interesting because this income test does not apply to Roth conversions. The Biden tax plan had proposed putting on income limits to Roth conversions, but that dropped off. But we still have these income limits for Roth contributions. So in this situation, they already made a contribution, but now they want to do a Roth conversion. And what I would say is, going back in time, if you could, don't do the Roth contribution, just do the Roth conversion. Because a Roth contribution, you're taking money from here, moving it over there. That's a contribution. Okay. So you have this post-tax money that you have, and you contribute it to your Roth. Well, I would prefer to do a conversion where you move pre-tax IRA money, pay the tax, and do it as a Roth conversion. Because what's the worst type of money if you think taxes are going up? So what's the worst? So number one, in terms of worst, is IRA money. This is a pre-tax money. We want to spend this money down. Then what type of money do we want to get rid of? Then it's non-qualified. So by doing a contribution, you've actually switched around the order of where we'd want to pull the money. So we want to pull the money not from number two, we want to pull the money from number one. So first thing I would do is go back in time, if we could, and get rid of that Roth contribution, because we don't want to do that. Instead, we'd prefer to do all of that. So if they said, hey, you know what, we did a $14,000 Roth contribution, a much better approach would have been to do a $14,000 Roth conversion. Okay. But we cannot go back in time. So that's where the details matter. Like a lot of people, I don't know, just the details matter. You need to look at the overall picture before you go out and start making these decisions. So now what can we do? Because if we convert too much, and let's say we get up to that 24% tax bracket, that maxes out for a married couple at $326,000. So now if they were to max this out, those contributions might not be legal. We might have some tax issues. So what can we do? So really we have three options if you do want to move forward with the Roth conversions, which is what I would do. So one, what we can do is we can take out the, we can withdraw it. So withdraw the conversion. So that's one option. I'm sorry, withdraw the contribution. So withdraw the contribution. So just take the money out and put it back, okay? So we can do that within the year. Second thing we can do is we can recharacterize. And what this means is we can say, you know what, that Roth contribution that I was planning on doing, really, I want to turn that into a Roth or IRA contribution. So the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act got rid of Roth conversion recharacterizations, but it still allows us to do Roth contributions, Roth contribution recharacterizations, where now that money that we moved into, that 7,000 or 14,000 we moved into a Roth, we can recharacterize that and move that into an IRA. Or the third option, especially at this point, is just wait till January and then do the Roth conversion then. The downside of that is we lost a year of potential big conversions. So I wouldn't do that. I would either put the money back basically, or I would do a recharacterization, say, okay, that's going to be IRA money, and then the rest we can do Roth. So kind of confusing, but that's where it's important talk to professionals before we make these decisions, because you need to see the whole picture. So yeah, let's put more money in a Roth. Seems like a great idea. Let's do a Roth contribution. But what if we want to do a Roth conversion? Now we might have just shot ourselves in the foot. But like the idea is good. The idea is we want to get as much money as we can over here. So again, that's where when we're working with our clients, we're always focusing on what's your goal. Okay, I want to get as much money in here as I can. Okay, great. Now let's figure out what's the best strategy. Okay, and yeah, a Roth contribution is one strategy. A Roth conversion is another strategy. Moving money to IUL is another. There's different strategies. And then once we figure that part out, then we pick, okay, what tool are we going to utilize to do it? So a lot of people are good on the goals, but just if you're not doing this every day, you don't understand, or you might not understand all of the potential strategies and what is the best strategy. And that's really the value that we offer. So hopefully that's helpful on that. Let me see if anything came in here. Is there a limit on Roth IRA contributions per year? I don't think there's a limit other than just a dollar amount. So you could do like $500 a month if you wanted to, as long as it doesn't get greater than 6,000 or 7,000, depending on your age. Okay, all right, moving on to the next one. All right. By doing a Roth conversion to a higher tax bracket, won't this cause our Medicare premiums to increase? Is it worth it? So the answer to this is maybe. And the answer to this is typically yes. And what I have, and we have our preliminary one for 2022, our key data sheet. But basically, depending on your income, your Medicare premiums will go up 2 years in the future. So your Medicare premiums for 2021 is based on your 2019 adjusted gross income. And yeah, so what's going to happen is, let's say, so if this is your income tax bracket and you're at 12, or it starts at 10, 12, 22, 24, 32. So a lot of my clients fall in the kind of 22% tax bracket. Let's say you have $100,000 worth of income, okay? And then they do a Roth conversion up to the 326, getting up to the 24% tax bracket, because we know these are going up. This is going up to 25%. This is going up to 28%. So if I convert now at 24, that's greater than 25, so it makes sense. Plus, again, we're $30 trillion in debt at this point, and not to get political, but President Biden has his Build Back America plan, and he's potentially trying to raise taxes on the corporations and the wealthy, but his tax proposals are just to pay off his Build Back America plan, not taking into account the fact that we're 28 trillion, almost $30 trillion in debt as a country. So most people think taxes have to go potentially much higher in the future. So yeah, what's going to happen is when you do this conversion, so if you do this in 2021, then in 2023, your Medicare premiums are going to go up for the year that you do the conversion. But then if you don't do it in 2022, then your Medicare premiums go right back down. And so for some of my clients, and I'm not saying this is everyone, because it depends on what other sources of income you have. But let's say you do have a lot of IRA money. And we did this with some clients this year, where we said, okay, you know what? Let's move this money to either non-qualified or to tax-free. And then now they don't have any IRA money. What that means in the future, they're not going to have any RMDs. So if you don't have RMDs, and if you don't have a pension, so a lot of my clients take the lump sum buyout. Well, if you don't have RMDs, you don't have pensions, guess what? Now your Social Security won't get taxed. You'll be paying the lowest Medicare premiums for the rest of your life, and you'll potentially be in the 0% tax bracket. And if taxes do go up in the future, like even if they double, 2 times 0 is still 0. So what we can do is we can create these different sources of tax-free income in retirement, where now you have your Roth money coming in. Like, let's say you converted to Roth, and let's say you moved money to IUL. Now you have cash value life insurance, the money coming in. These are all income sources, and not just income sources, they're tax-free income sources. So your Roth, your IUL, if you're in the 0% tax bracket, guess what? Now your Social Security comes in tax-free as well. So like I have some clients where we get all the money out of those IRAs, so we don't have to worry about RMDs for the rest of life. So instead of being at this 22% tax bracket for the rest of our life, where we're having to worry about Medicare premiums and taxes potentially going up in the future, we say, you know what, let's just bite the bullet and get us so the rest of our retirement is at a 0% tax bracket. Now for the rest of our life, even though, yeah, the year that we do the conversions, our Medicare premiums are higher, but for the rest of our life, they're as low as possible. And then if they do raise taxes in the future, then 2 times 0 is still 0. Someone's asking traditional IRA contributions. It's going to be the same for your IRAs. So it's 6,000, and then after age 50, you get a $1,000 bonus. And if you email me, just reply back and say you want the 2022 key data, I can get that over to you. So yeah, 2 years after you do the conversion, your Medicare premiums will go up, but then they'll go back down. And we can run the numbers, but especially where with taxes are going in the future, can almost guarantee that you're saving a ton of money, especially in the long run. Gives you, our clients, a ton of peace of mind of now we've taken one of the biggest risks off the table. And I think there's really kind of 3 big risks. One is long-term care costs. So the cost of long-term care, we're living longer than ever. Second one, especially kind of given the role we've been on for the last roughly 13 years, is market risk, especially as you get older and you don't have time to make this money up. And then third is tax risk. And with that, what I'll put is legislative risk. And so for our clients who are really concerned about tax risk and legislative risk, getting to this 0% tax bracket or lowest tax bracket possible really appeals to them. Okay, next one. All right, we have a legacy trust. If separate shares are created before the required 10-year distribution for the IRAs, how do the beneficiaries share the IRAs? So what we have is, let's say we have a married couple and they have a trust. And what happens is when they pass away, let's say they have 3 kids. And now each child inherits their own separate share trust, where whatever they keep inside of the trust for their lifetime could be protected from divorces, creditors, etc. So we call these provisions, we call this the legacy trust, because you're leaving a legacy. Because what we're doing is we're now giving the kids the opportunity. So whatever they inherit from you, if anything, is protected from creditors, divorce, and the money stays in the family or stays in the bloodline. So a big advantage over just that outright distribution at 25, 30, 35. So the question is, all right, let's say we've named our IRA to flow into the trust once we pass away. Okay, so we name the trust as a beneficiary. So what happens is now that IRA basically gets split into 3 separate shares. So now we have the IRA that's in trust for the benefit of child 1. Same thing for the benefit of child 2, and then for the benefit of child 3. So this one trust basically splits into 3 separate trusts. And then each trust would then manage the IRA for the benefit of the beneficiaries. And it'd be set up ahead of time. So mom and dad passes away. Now we have child one. We now retitle 1/3 of that IRA, the mom and dad trust for the benefit of child one. And so it's pretty straightforward. And then with the Secure Act, it's not a 10-year distribution. It's the IRA has to pay the taxes within 10 years. That's different than distributing all the money to the child within 10 years. So the Secure Act says that, yeah, we can actually keep the money in the trust. We just have to take it out of the IRA, and then we can pay the tax and have it taxed at the kid's tax rate. So it's really not as confusing as it seems. We take that one IRA, we just split it into 3 separate shares, and instead of naming it in the child's name, we name it in the mom and dad trust for the benefit of child one. So pretty straightforward. Now here's an additional question on legacy trusts. Original owners deceased, beneficiaries set up legacy trusts, and both technically the trustee would have the owner would have to set up that legacy trust. So the kids inherit the legacy trust, and both have married. Does it exist? Okay, yeah. So what the question is okay, so child one, let's say he inherits this money, and now it's what he inherited from mom and dad is in a legacy trust. But let's say he's married, and let's say they have a child of their own. Okay. Well, what happens with the legacy trust is that the money stays in the bloodline. So this money would go to the grandchild. That's why a lot of parents set these trusts up. Now, that's not to say that husband and wife here, they should have their own estate planning done. Because I'm guessing with maybe the money that they've worked together, if husband were to pass away, he'd probably want the surviving spouse to be able to hold on to kind of their joint marital assets, versus you as a parent up here, you want your money to flow down to the grandchild because you don't want wife to run off with Biff the pool boy. Right? So the money that's held in the legacy trust flows down to the grandchild, versus depending on how the trust is set up or whether the son and daughter-in-law have a estate plan, if son passes away, what son and daughter-in-law own together probably goes to the daughter-in-law, and now she could run off with a pool boy, versus what you leave to your son in trust flows down to the grandchildren. So if you set up a trust that provides for your child, that's not to preclude the child from doing their own estate plan. And they should do their own estate plan. And I know someone who can help them with that. But it doesn't affect their own planning. So they still need to do their own planning. All right. And just checking on questions in the chat. We're good there. All right. All right. I've been reading that some banks and brokerage may not honor a POA without lengthy kind of legal battle unless it's their own form and it's on file with them. What is your experience and how do you advise? So this is where, understand, this is a big thing. Like, I can't stress this enough. Not all tools are created equal. Not all advice is equal. And where this is important is powers of attorney. Not all powers of attorney are created equal. This is something that when we're doing our in-person workshops, I really had to stress this, because someone would say, oh, I have a trust, or I have a will, or I have a power of attorney, or I have investments, I have a mutual fund. I have annuity, I have life insurance, or I have long-term care insurance. I don't need to worry. Like, these are all just tools. They're not all created equal. And sometimes you're not even using the right tools. Where I see this a lot in the legal world is with powers of attorney. So I had a woman call in and say, pretty wealthy woman. She had like over $1.5 million of assets. And she's saying, hey, Chris, I can get a free UAW legal plan from work. Why should I consider putting together an estate plan with you? And so I had to kind of educate her on not all tools are created equal, because I've reviewed those plans before. They're typically on a blue back piece of paper, especially the power of attorney. It's only about 5 pages. You may or may not have a trust. It's not a legacy trust, doesn't protect the kids. All it does is if it's funded properly, maybe it avoids probate, and they don't even help you with the funding. All they're doing is just giving you a boilerplate tool. But the big issue with the powers of attorney is a lot of times these are like 5 pages. And understand that when you're creating a set of legal documents, that's your rule book. All the power resides in what is in those documents. Our power of attorney in our office is about, and we just kind of updated, but I think it's about 24 pages. And it's not that we're paid by the word or we like killing trees. It's that we found that when you're talking about like estate planning documents, a trust, powers of attorney, think of that as your rule book. Okay. The language in that is what gives it power. And if you have a 5-page power of attorney, yeah, they're going to run it through their legal department unless it specifically says what you're trying to do. The legal department's always going to be like, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that. So if you're hearing horror stories about financial institutions not accepting powers of attorney or documents, a lot of times I'd first say, let's take a look at the document. And more often than not, it's going to be some shoddily drafted, very thin, very sparse, kind of blank check that doesn't specifically list out all those different things. Like, we don't include all that language just because we like killing trees. We're paid by the word. We found that in our experience, we need to be very specific. Like, we include things like oil, mineral, and gas rights. Not that we think all of our clients are the Beverly Hillbillies sitting on black gold, but we found in our experience that it's important to include that language in there because you never know. And there's no harm in including it. So usually when I hear problems with the power of attorney, the first issue is just poor documents. Like, they're not all drafted equally, unfortunately. Now, the second issue is you could have the best drafted documents in the world, but to use a legal term, banks and a lot of financial institutions, they suck. Okay, that's why we work with custodians and they listen to what we say, versus you walk into your credit union or your bank, and depending on who you talk to, they're going to tell you something different between Monday and Tuesday. You can walk into the same place, you talk to 2 different people, you're going to hear 2 different answers. And a lot of times it's legal answers, which they're not able to provide. And then they'll run it through their legal department. Well, guess what? A lot of times their legal department sucks too. For example, I had a client who, we won't say which financial institution, but they were having troubles changing a beneficiary. And we had to change a beneficiary because someone was in a nursing home. And I got on the phone with the legal department and it said, no, you can't do that. And because it doesn't say it in the document. And then I pointed them to a specific article, let's just say article 12.2 that specifically said we could do what we were trying to do. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't read that far. So I was like, okay, why are we making our clients jump through all these silly hoops, especially when whatever we're doing is always in the best or in the client's interest. So the best way to fight it is, or to ensure that you don't run into any hassles, kind of facetious, but not, work with us, because we have relationships with custodians, but more importantly, we can put together a set of legal documents so you're not going to run into these issues. Because again, not all documents are created equal. It's just an unfortunate fact. Not all attorneys, not all advisors are equal. Not all tools are equal. My wife makes fun of me because when we met, I'm not the handiest guy in the world. And so I had a drill, but it was from IKEA. So yeah, it's a drill, but it's not the highest quality drill. Like, if you try to do a real job, it's just not going to work. So, all right. That is all I have submitted ahead of time. Here's another question coming in. So if you do have more questions, please put it in the Q&A, and I will try to answer it. Here's another question that just came in, and this is my last one, unless any more come in. Anything new that might affect Roth conversions this year or next? So if you want to do a Roth conversion, we're about out of time. Like we tell our clients the absolute drop dead date is December 3rd to get this started. Just got off a Zoom with some clients, probably the last Roth conversion we're doing this year for our clients. So there's not really anything new this year. They had talked about it. President Biden had, as part of his Build Back Better America and tax proposal, he had talked about limiting the income or that you're allowed to have to be able to do a Roth conversion. So I talked about earlier how there's income limits on Roth contributions. And so that's where some people look at these alternatives of like backdoor Roths, and you can do like Roth ladders, and you can do rich man's Roths. They all have like kind of funny names, but there's different strategies to get money into that tax-free bucket, even if the income allowance or income limits on a Roth contribution don't allow you to do so. Again, it's about developing the right strategies. So there are income limits on Roth contributions, but there are no income limits on Roth conversions. And that was part of his proposal, was to limit Roth conversions based on your income. And so a lot of people, when I'm meeting with them, will ask me, well, don't you think there's some legislative risk to say that that money that you moved over to the Roth, they'll find another way to tax? I say that's doubtful, but what I do see them doing, because again, we have a huge tax burden. We're about $30 trillion in debt. Both sides are spending, both Republican and Democrat. One of my favorite things, kind of when I have a minute or two, is especially right now, I didn't follow as much before, but President Biden will tweet something or put it up on Facebook and like, here, I'm doing this too, and everyone should get behind it. And then the Libertarian Party will make some type of like snarky comment. It's kind of funny. It just makes me laugh. But I was checking it today, and he said that like we need to support the Build Back America because it's going to help. It's not going to help inflation. The problem we have is that we're about $30 trillion in debt. What's the government? What are the government's options? They're going to print more money, which is going to raise inflation even further when we're talking about a 5.9% spike in Social Security next year, which is unheard of. We haven't had that high of increase in Social Security benefits since 1981. You look at the price of gas, obviously inflation is a concern. So printing money is not an answer to the tax question. They're not going to cut spending. We haven't seen that on both sides, both Republican and Democrat. It's just a fact. They just spend the money on different things. So really, the only answer at the end of the day is raising taxes. So that's why we've seen really since probably 2015, 2016, a mad rush to try to get as much money over to that tax-free bucket as possible. So I don't think, I find it doubtful that they're going to be able to come after the money in that money that's already been converted over to tax-free, whether it's in Roth or IUL. If that is a concern, then don't do Roths. I would look to IUL because there's less people doing IUL. So there's less legislative risk on them coming after the IULs than I would say the Roths. But where I first see them addressing this is limiting people moving money to the tax-free bucket. You see this with the limits on the Roth contributions. You saw this proposed with the Roth conversions, limiting the income. And sure, the initial proposal had limited, well, if you're making over $400,000, then you can't do a Roth conversion. Well, guess what? Slippery slope. You start there, and then it's going to work its way down to kind of middle-class America too. So nothing specific right now on limiting Roth conversions. But that said, I think depending on kind of what happens, I think that's going to be something that they're going to go after. Not to come after the money that's already in the Roth. I find that doubtful, but possible. And if you are concerned about that, then I would switch to the IUL instead of the Roth. But more I see them limiting moving money from tax, especially tax deferred pre-tax to tax-free. So yeah, but yeah, nothing else this year, nothing on the books. That's just the way I see things going in the future. So, all right, anything else? Going once, going twice, and sold. All right, have a great week. Oh, someone was asking, what's the schedule coming up? So we're going to have these weekly wisdom webinars until the 22nd. So that'll be the last one of the year. 22nd, right before the holidays there. And then we will be off until the 12th. So we'll take a break kind of at the end of the year and at the beginning of New Year, and then we'll fire up the 12th. So we'll keep going until the 22nd, and then we'll take a short break, and I'll make sure that it's updated in the registrations. So with that, nope, a couple things coming in. Defined IUL. Yep. IUL stands for Index Universal Life Insurance. There is a life insurance component, but the only reason we have the life insurance component, if we're just strictly focusing on a tax-free growth vehicle, is so that it qualifies under what's called Section 7702 of the tax code, where we actually minimize the death benefit and maximize the cash value accumulation. And so it can grow tax-free, similar to a Roth. And the way it grows is that it has like an annual index where if the market goes up, you collect the upside. If the market goes down, you don't lose anything. It's complicated. There's pros and cons. I'm not saying it's for everyone. It's just another tool of tax-free growth, and that death benefit can also offer a long-term care benefit. IRA provide future taxes. Yes, IRAs provide future taxes. And that's why the government wanted us to defer paying as long as possible. Because here's the thing. Let me share my screen again. And this is something scary, actually, that came out of the Secure Act. This was like, for me, this was a huge red flag. So, Roth, why would the government delay taxes to future government? Okay, yeah. So this is a really interesting point. It's kind of complicated, but I want to take a minute to show this. So the government wants you to defer paying taxes. Like, they want you to defer paying taxes. That's why they emphasize, like, oh, everyone should do a 401k, and you can have your employer match the 401k. Defer as long as possible. Here's why. So let's say we have a IRA or 401k, and then let's say we have a Roth or IUL or something that grows tax-free. Okay, and let's just kind of keep it simple. Let's assume a 20% tax bracket. All right. So let's say, just keeping the numbers even, let's say we have $100,000 pre-tax, right? And then if we did a Roth conversion, assuming a 20% tax, what would be left over here? If you're feeling frisky, type in the answer. All right, 80,000. Yep. All right. Everyone with me on that? So 100,000 pre-tax, you have a 20% tax, that equals 80% post-tax. Do we all agree that that's the same number? Because if we don't, we have a problem. So 100,000 pre-tax is the same as 80,000 post-tax, assuming a 20% tax bracket. So now let's say both of these grow 10%. So I use this example to illustrate a couple of things. So let's assume they're invested in the same exact thing, XYZ mutual fund. Both of them goes up 10%, whether it's inside of an IRA or whether it's inside of a Roth. So now we add 10% here. So that goes up 10,000. This goes up 8,000. So now this equals 88,000. This equals 110,000. Well, this is looking good in the IRA side. It looks like we have more money over there. But we still got to pay tax, right? Because IRAs, 401ks, you have to pay tax at some point. It's just a matter of when do you pay the tax. And I thought I was sharing my screen this whole time, and I wasn't. So that's not helpful. You need to tell me when I'm not sharing my screen. All right. Whoops. That's not what I wanted to do. All right. Now this will make more sense. So now you should be seeing my screen. So we have an IRA, we have Roth, we have a 20% tax, we have $100,000 pre-tax, 80,000 post-tax. Those are the same number. Both of them go up 10% because they're invested in the same exact thing. Pre-tax in the IRA, we have 110,000. Post-tax, 10% of the 80,000 is 8,000, so that goes up to 88,000. Now, the question is this the same number? The answer is no, because we still have to pay tax. So the tax on the IRA, now what do we have to subtract out? Now it's 22,000, right? So now what are we left with over here? 88,000. So the first reason I show clients this is to dissuade them of the idea that having a bigger chunk pre-tax, getting growth there is better. Because it's not. This is the same thing. If taxes remain exactly the same, it does not benefit you to defer the taxes or get the growth on the bigger number. Because all you're doing is you're growing a tax bill. By deferring, you're paying the government more versus if you pay them right off the top. So the question that came in or comment is that the IRA provides future taxes. You're right, it does. And that's where this scary thing is coming in. And this started in the Secure Act. This really kind of freaked me out, to be honest. I put a little tinfoil hat on my head after this, because what the Secure Act said is, so first it pushed back RMD age from 70 and a half to 72. Like, that's not the real reason why they passed this. The real reason they passed this is they said, instead of the lifetime stretch, so if your kids inherit this, if your kids inherit pre-tax dollars, they used to have a lifetime stretch. They could stretch out the taxes over the lifetime. Because again, the government wants you to defer paying taxes. But what they did is they said, nope, can't do that anymore. Now all you get is a 10-year stretch. And this is why it scares me, is because, as the comment said, the government makes more money in the long run if you defer the taxes. But when they passed this, we were sitting on I think at the time of passage, $22,000, 22,000. I wish it was 22,000. We were sitting on $22 trillion worth of debt. Okay. Imagine what the interest is on that. And so the government saw this as like a debt balloon that, like, if interest rates go up, what's going to happen? Like, what if that pops? So they're looking at some strategies to say, okay, this amount of debt is getting out of hand. We're not going to be able to even cover the interest on this. But they passed this in 2020. Whoops. 2020. What happened after 2020? March of 2020, the pandemic, right? And so now the government was already taking action to say, you know what, our debt is getting out of control. We need to take some stopgap measures to try to get this down. That's what getting rid of this lifetime stretch did, is they were trying to get some tax money to pay this down. Because when this passed, the Secure Act, guess how much money there's in pre-tax IRAs? $26 trillion. So the government was saying, okay, you know what, we're not going to take this from the retirees, but when you pass away, now we're going to get rid of the stretch, and that's going to be used to help pay this off. But then the pandemic happened, and now this 22 trillion is ballooned to, it was 22.2 trillion last time I checked. So, like, for me, this is just another, like, a big red flag. Like, not to put on a tinfoil hat, but like, it's kind of depressing for me. It's a little scary, to be honest. I don't have an answer. It's above my pay grade. Another comment. Present party A get Roth conversion tax. Future party B get IRA tax. Roth conversion tax helps A balance today's budget. I'm not quite following that, but yeah, we have to take into account, like, when we look at Roth conversions and everything like that, we're not taking account just your retirement, but also what you're leaving to the next generation. So I'm not saying everyone needs to pull their money from Roth IRAs or from traditional IRAs and convert everything this year or anything like that. I'm just saying that engaging in some tax planning, I think taxes are one of the biggest risks out there. And again, so if your goal is tax planning, one strategy is a Roth conversion. I'm not saying that's the only strategy, there might be other things that we want to do. Like if you have an asset protection trust, you don't want to do Roth conversions. You might want to do something else. So again, it's what is your goal? If your goal's minimizing taxes, there's a lot of different strategies out there. You just go on Google, then it's going to be Roth conversion all day. But understand that that might not be appropriate. And then if it is appropriate, how much to do? So there's more that goes into it based on what your goals are. But I don't know. Taxes are a big concern for me. Not only like for my clients, like for me, for my kids. So even how I'm saving for my kids, I'm taking that into account. So, all right. Any other? Thanks for that last comment, question. Kind of got me off on a little bit of a rant, but it's good. It's good. All right. All right. Done. Take care. Make it a great week. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. See ya. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.